welcome you to the second and final commencement of our centennial year. The speaker for this important occasion is a native of Lubbock, Texas. He was born in 1944 and soon thereafter moved to the city of Houston with his parents, where he attended the public schools and graduated from Phyllis Wheatley High School. A member of the band, active in athletics, very active in the field of health sciences. He took his degree in pharmacy from Texas Southern University in 1970. He went on to work as an instructor in the area of clinical pharmacy at his alma mater. This career in science was somewhat short-lived because he immediately began to see a larger domain in which the entire field of health and social action must be developed. And in 1967, with 4 others, he organized a community action team to seek the solution to economic, racial, cultural problems of the disadvantaged in the Houston community. He created the Committee on Community Health, which served as a prototype for the now developing Baylor Medical School College of Community Medicine. In 1969, he organized the Houston chapter of the Medical Committee for Human Rights. He began to look farther, and he saw that an important ingredient in making action take place was the legislature. So in 1972, he ran and was elected one of the first state representatives of our race to be elected in recent years to the state legislature. During this session, he served on the Labor Committee, Human Resources Committee, Legislative Council Board, and was Vice Chairman of the Joint Committee on Prison Reform. He introduced the first health maintenance organization legislation. He was active, as you recall, in generic labeling on drugs, something which he did not have a lot of success at that time, but he laid the foundation, and this is coming to pass in these months and years present and ahead. He served as a member of the Constitutional Convention Committee in 1974. He's worked on many important committees, and during the 64th legislature, this distinguished leader introduced over 40 pieces of legislation, including the Health Maintenance Organization and Labor Act. He's active in the area of human rights, prison reform, services and educational programs for teenagers, antitrust legislation, equal employment, educational opportunity, drug education and drug products, and active in the whole concept of single-member city council districts. He served on the House Appropriation Committee, and under his leadership in the last several years, this university, Prairie View University, because of his dynamic influence, has increased its appropriation threefold. Much of this is credited solely to our speaker this morning. He served on the Conference Committee on Appropriation, the Committee on Health and Welfare, the Committee on Public Service, and was the first member of our race to serve on the very important Legislative Budget Board, and I certainly wish he was back on that board this year. In 1976, he was elected to the National Democratic Committee and was active with the Harris County Democratic Committee. Was active in the Senatorial District 15 caucus. You've seen him in the news recently because he, along with about 7 others, ran for the vacant seat in the 18th Congressional District. And he is an example of success. We talk about operational success at Prairie View. He is a man who believed he could achieve it, and he went out and he did achieve it. He will be the newest congressman representing the 18th District in Congress in January. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you a young man, a man who believes in people, a man who has the commitment of his conviction to go out and work for each one of us, and he certainly worked for Prairie View A&M University. A man who demonstrated that he could almost come from the bottom and get completely out in front, and a man who will represent District 18, and a man who I predict in the next years ahead might be coming back to Texas and becoming one of our first senators from our race in recent years. Let me introduce to you, let me present to you the Speaker of the Hour, the Honorable George Mickey Leland.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Thomas. I've grown to know and appreciate and respect and even love Dr. Thomas. He's a hard-nosed cat like I am. I love him even more now because he has given me the first opportunity to stand before a commencement exercise and give the commencement address, which is unusual for a person like Mickey Leland. I think that it's unusual because I have many times, not because I intended to, but because it just came out that way, I've insulted people who have listened to me because I tell the truth about most things. I'm here today because I love Prairie View A&M for a lot of reasons. Let me address my fellow guests on the dais and say to you that I appreciate sharing this dais with you because it is probably one of the most honorable circumstances of life that any one person can enjoy in our history today. As I talk to you today, and I'm somewhat informal as I speak, I hope that I will not offend anybody as I have usually done because I tell the truth. But I hope that you will all understand that Mickey Leland is speaking from the heart and trying to get a message across. You know that they say a Texas politician's speech is like a Texas steer. There's a point over here, a point over here, and a lot of bull in between. As I speak, I will try to make a lot of points and give you just a little bit of bull. I'm most honored and pleased to be able to deliver this commencement address today for several reasons. Prairie View A&M has long been a very, very special university to me. Although I was graduated from Texas Southern University, I've had a close working relationship with Prairie View for many, many years, and a relationship by blood. My grandfather, Armstrong Lewis, taught here at this university. He was a blacksmith. He taught welding and all that went along with that. He too, in his history, has enjoyed, before he died, an invaluable education from an institution that's paralleled with Prairie View A&M, and that institution is Tuskegee. He studied under Dr. George Washington Carver when Booker T. Washington was president. And I speak of Booker T. Washington in the same vein that I refer to Dr. Thomas, especially today because we are in, I guess, the most difficult times in our home country, or at least the country we call home today, America. During my 6 years in the Texas legislature, especially for the past 4 years while I have served on the Appropriations Committee, I have fought, and I underscore fight, fought continuously to increase the state funding for this institution, and it was hard and difficult. This effort has been a labor of love for me, and the advances we have made have given me a great deal of personal satisfaction. It's no easy task to stand up and fight wherever you are for black institutions around this country. If you don't believe me, look at the record just today where they're closing many of our black institutions down. That's why we have to recommit ourselves, and I challenge you today out there, those of you who have gained the privilege of coming here and receiving a degree from this great institution, come back and give your money once you have made it. Come back and give your time and your energies. I don't care whether you're black, white, brown, or whatever color you are, whether you're from Africa, whether you're from Latin America, wherever. Come back and pay homage to this university because it's in a struggle for its life. And believe me, I know because I'm there in the state legislature and I know what they'd like to do to Prairie View A&M and Texas Southern University in this state. I know what they're doing to other schools that happen to be majority black in this country. So come back, my dear people, and help this school. I'm totally committed to preserving the role of Prairie View A&M and other black schools in Texas and this United States. One of my highest priorities in the United States Congress will be to ensure support for these schools so that they can continue to provide quality education to members of society that otherwise might be excluded. Let me tell you something. In 1963, I graduated from Phyllis Wheatley High School. I applied to the University of Houston, right down the street from Texas Southern University. I was accepted at the University of Michigan, at the University of Southern California, at Hampton Institute, at Howard. I was accepted at schools all over this country, and yet in 1973, the University of Houston said, "I'm sorry, but you cannot go to this school because you're colored." Think about that. In 1963, it's not too long ago, I have never in my lifetime sat in one classroom with a fellow white student. I ventured to go to Texas Southern University, where I gained one of the highest quality educations that anybody in this nation could gain. Look at me, a little old cat from Fifth Ward, Texas, going to Congress in January. Spent 6 years in a rural conservative legislature, fighting for those things that I believed in, that came from my heart, hopefully that served the best interest of not only black people in this state, but also the people who happen to be poor whites and the people who happen to be of Latin American descent, the Chicanos and the Hispanic community of our state. For 6 years, when I walked up to the House of Representatives and I made my first speech on the floor of the House, I was scared to death. I looked out amongst my colleagues and they were mostly rural, conservative, white folks. And I was there with my afro twice as long as it is now. Those folks had had all kinds of preconceived notions about who Mickey Leland was because they knew that prior to my coming there, I was in the civil rights struggle, relatively insignificant character. I was raising my voice against those people who refused to allow for us to have a part in our system in this America. I was raising my voice to heighten the consciousness of this country and this state and the people of my Houston community. And I proved to them in 1978 as I leave the House of Representatives that people who are of color, especially black people who have been suppressed, oppressed, repressed, all the rest of the resters, moreover than anybody else in this country, can be highly intelligent, even more so than the majority of their colleagues in the House of Representatives. They can make a contribution to this society. I might not have gone to school with many white students, and their intelligence might not have rubbed off on me. I might not have been served by the teaching of white students, white teachers rather. I might not have been served by white administrators when I went to Texas Southern University, where I matriculated and learned what matriculated meant. But I was one of the sharpest legislators in Austin, Texas, and I proved it. They appointed me. They appointed me to the Appropriations Committee, where I was able to garner millions and millions of dollars for Texas Southern and Prairie View A&M, where I was able to seek out the best interest and try to protect the best interest of the welfare of poor people in this state. And by the way, just as a matter of information, I proved to them that there are numerically more poor white people in this state than there are blacks and Chicanos. I even changed some of my conservative white colleagues' minds. Texas Monthly called me the conscience of the legislature. And I tell you these things not because I'm lauding myself. I am probably the most humble person you ever want to know. But I'm telling you that if Mickey Leland can make it and has graduated from a black institution like Texas Southern University, you can go to greater heights. I recall my press conference when I related to the people of the city of Houston and the state of Texas that Mickey Leland was throwing his hat in the ring to run for the United States Congress of this America. And at the end of my press conference, one of the reporters raised his hand and he said, "Mr. Leland, how long have you planned to do this?" I said, "I never knew that Miss Jordan had decided that she was going to retire, so therefore I didn't plan very long." "Well, how ambitious are you, Mr. Leland?" And I said, "Well, I'm as ambitious as the people around me want me to be, and obviously they want me to be ambitious." And then they asked me, what did I want to do beyond the United States Congress? And I turned to the reporter and very quickly said, "I want to be President of the United States of America." The next day, the reporter reported, and I quote, "Mickey Leland says that he wants to be President of the United States of America," and all present laughed but him. And I ask you, as I did them, why not? Why not? For too long have we as black people put limitations on our goals and our heights. Those that wanted to go farther either got killed or put in jail. But today we have learned that we can protect ourselves by running for political office. But we too in the political arena can go to our greatest heights if we continue to work on that. Mickey Leland is not talking about Mickey Leland the person. Mickey Leland is speaking not only for me, but for you too. There might be a president of the United States of America seated right out there, a most beautiful woman who sits right out there somewhere. We cannot limit ourselves to what the system wants us to limit ourselves to. Though I'm going to Washington, I'm not leaving you or this school. I am simply moving on to a greater challenge, as I have indicated, with greater opportunity to serve you and the people of Texas, much like the new challenges and opportunities you will face in the future. Today, I want to talk to you about two issues, and I'll try not to be too long. First, humanism, that is the needs of human beings, whether they are in the Fifth Ward or in Texas or in the United States or somewhere else in this world, Lagos, Dar es Salaam, Addis Ababa. And second, to offer a challenge to each of you to chart a course for your future that will be sensitive to the needs of humanity. President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, a little old black man, one of the most powerful political figures in our history, in our world history today, president of Tanzania, a little East African country, says that we as African people must move to destroy those lines that divide African nations. But we must go farther than that. We as African people must move to destroy those lines that divide humanity. And I learned from that. We cannot continue to be racist or byproduct racist and struggle against racism at the same time. How can you be a victim of racism and be a racist at the same time? Chart your course carefully. Understand that to be pro-black is not to be anti-white. To be pro-black is not to be anti-Chicano. To be pro-black is not to be anti-system necessarily. But understand very, very carefully that we as black people, we as minorities in this country today, have not been fooled. America has put Mickey Leland on television, and Barbara Jordan, and Craig A. Washington, who graduated from this fine university and who is now chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus. They put us on TV and they fooled our people in our communities. That's evidenced by the numbers, the lack of numbers of people going to the polls to vote on whatever issue. And they try to lull us to sleep by saying, yeah, we let Mickey Leland win his congressional seat. Yeah, we let Craig Washington and Senfronia Thompson and Anthony Hall win their seats in politics. But that's just not enough. The responsibility is on your shoulders. We must continue to struggle. We must heighten, as my chairman, my future chairman, Mr. Perrin Mitchell, has said, we must heighten the consciousness of this America and continue to struggle to that end. Otherwise, we are lost. But don't think for 1 minute that all is well. Complacency, in my view, is the most dangerous threat to the continued advancement of human needs. We certainly have not solved all the problems. In fact, we have only begun to recognize the magnitude of some. There are troubled times ahead. The plight of the poor and oppressed in the ghettos and the barrios of Texas, in America, and in other countries of the world remains extremely critical. In fact, never has humanity and humanism been faced with such overpowering threats while people are starving in Latin America and Africa and basic standards of human rights are being violated in country after country. The emphasis is on power politics, national defense, more weapons, and promoting the self-interest of big business. How can the richest and supposedly one of the most civilized nations in the world justify our minimal effort to better the human condition? And it's up to us, black folks, and those of you who care. Last year in Congress, there was an effort to enact a sense of Congress resolution to gradually increase our foreign economic aid to a mere 1% of our gross national product. This effort was overwhelmingly defeated. Our current contribution is roughly 1/5 of 1% of the gross national product. We are about number 17 amongst the highly industrialized nations of this country. When compared to the other foreign assistance of other countries, we show a pitiful, pitiful showing. Likewise, when President Carter submitted a rational, moderate energy proposal to do something about our exorbitant consumption and waste of energy and the resulting deterioration in our international monetary position, the special interest groups expend vast sums of money to subvert the proposal in Congress. And on other critical human issues like national health insurance and legislation to reduce unemployment, to better the housing conditions of our folks in our community, and to control the inflation that is paralyzing us all. Human beings cry out for help and nothing is done right here in good old America. I could go on for hours, but I know that you'd run me off this podium. I could give you instance after instance where human needs are going unmet. But a more exciting question is why? Why are human beings and human needs treated with such disregard, complacency, greed, ignorance? Thank God for Prairie View A&M. And certainly all reasons. The growing tendency is not to get involved, to retreat into personal isolation from the fellow beings and to take care of yourself, or to throw up your arms and say nothing can be done, my help won't help. This apathy destroys humanism. But there's another cause. There are forces at work who are opposed to humanism, against economic opportunity for blacks, Chicanos, and the poor, who have their own selfish interests to promote. These forces are hard at work to destroy the progress we have made. Look at the Supreme Court, the final guardian of our constitutional guarantees. Slowly, the Nixon appointees to the court have chipped away at the landmark decisions of the Warren Court and overruled the precious verdicts that outlawed segregation, that gave accused persons basic fairness in the criminal process, and that barred discrimination based on race in employment and housing. The decisions that finally, after 100 years, and I thank you for letting me say this on your 100th anniversary, allowed the words of the 14th Amendment, equal protection of the laws, to have some meaning. For example, think about it. Look at the Bakke decision. This is a monumental retreat from the prior commitment to guarantee access of racial minorities to all benefits of our society. And look at the decision in the Rodriguez case, where the Supreme Court had the gall to declare that public school education for poor Chicano children was not a fundamental guaranteed right by the United States Constitution. The same is true in the political process. At the now infamous California Proposition 13 and the growing taxpayer revolts around the country. This movement is a fraud. The average taxpayer, like you and I, did not start this revolt. Large landowners, oil companies, timber barons, conservatives who don't care about human needs or human services started this revolt, and they are succeeding in using us to serve their own purposes. Who then are the losers in these victories for the special interest? We are, those who care about the delivery of human services and meeting human needs. In a movement to limit taxes and roll back government expenditures, what are the first services to go? History shows us that human-oriented programs will be first cut. Welfare, education, teacher salaries, mental health and retardation programs, our higher educational institution programs that relate most specifically to us. These are the expendable programs to our system. Millions of dollars for roads, railroads, and new buildings will take priority over human needs. The other losers are the average taxpayers. You and I will be the ones left holding the bag when new taxes are required in a few years to replace the revenue we have given to the special interests during this last special session, by the way, the House of Representatives in the state of Texas. People, graduates, we have to wake up. We cannot sit back and be complacent. The world needs you. The Republicans are not, the ultra-conservatives are not, the special interest lobbies are not, and we cannot. We cannot take the education for which we have worked so hard and retreat into a comfortable middle-class existence. If we do, our opponents, those who have no desire for meeting the basic human needs of our society, will overrun and defeat us time after time. If I sound alarmed, it's because I have been overrun as a politician because I care and because I am alarmed. I want you to be alarmed. Now the challenge that I want to offer you, when confronted with undeniable documentation of the critical problems that continue to exist in this world of ours, what do we do? What do we do? I know that what Mickey Leland is going to do, and I have an ideal. Yeah, I sound like Dr. Martin Luther King. A plan for what America and Texas and the world should be like. I dream of an ideal of a world where human beings are put first, where each and every one of us can live in comfortable harmony without imposed boundaries between people and between nations. My ideal is a world where everyone has a right to adequate and comprehensive health care, where everyone can work on a job when he or she wants to, with dignity and pride, where education is not only available, but a right for everyone, where all governments respect the human rights of their citizens and afford fairness and equality, where the elderly are not locked out from our society, but are afforded the opportunity to contribute and live a full and rich life, and most important, where compassion and concern for human beings are put ahead of personal gain and personal favor. What about you? Of course, all of you will not go to Congress. All of you will not run for public office. Perhaps very few of you will even become directly involved in politics. But that is not the only way to accept my challenge. My challenge to you is to merely overcome indifference, to overcome complacency, and in your own way, to join with me in my ideal for a more humanistic society, a more humanistic world. First, you too must construct your plan, your ideal, your goals. I cannot give you a blueprint for this. Only you can face up to the factual reality of human needs, of human suffering, of poverty, and make a moral and very personal commitment to not accept these conditions. Remember the words of George Benson, who said, "The greatest love is the ability to learn yourself. And once you've accomplished that and determined what your goals are, then everybody in our world today is better off." This commitment in itself will require great moral courage to be different, to occasionally sacrifice the personal comforts of wealth and leisure. And now that you've graduated from Prairie View A&M, I know you're going to be relishing in all of your wealth and leisure. Once you have an ideal and have made your own personal commitment, you must act. There are an infinite number of ways for you to advance the ideals of a more humanistic world. I'll begin to stop here and won't read you or articulate to you my concerns about where you ought to be. Let me just wrap just for 1 minute and say to you that those of you who are going to be doctors, nurses, engineers, pharmacists, home economic teachers, homemakers in your own homes, those of you who are going to be beauticians, who are going to be the professionals in our society, we need you. Those of us who care about our people in the political world need you. America has not yet met its promise to all of its people. We have to fulfill that promise. The courts won't do it, and we know that now. It's up to each and every one of you as you file across this stage to receive your diplomas. Remember this, that gives you a privilege above and beyond the masses of this America, because they have not been able to enjoy an education like you have. That gives you the privilege to serve those people who need you most, who have not had those great opportunities as you have. Mickey Leland loves you. He is a man of the people who cares about all people, regardless of color and regardless of what their national status is. I promise you, as I hope that you will promise yourselves, that for as long as I live, I will keep the people in front of me. I will not be a person who is exalted above his own humanity or the people who elected him. And I hope that in your privileged position today in this society, that you will join with us who are marching to the only real goal in our lifetime today, that ultimate goal of freedom. I was going to do my poem for you, but I won't, because I know you're hot, and I know you're tired. And my poem is long. So I'm going to sit down by just saying to you, I recall there was an old black gentleman who lived on a farm that was owned by a white man in 1955. It was right at the height of the civil rights struggle. And during that struggle, it was the beginning of the civil rights struggle, and during that struggle, white folks in the Deep South were scared to death of what was happening. And they were around trying to find black folks that were going to say that everything was all right in the Deep South. And the white man went up to Joe Willie, was his name. He owned Joe Willie for all practical purposes. He was a sharecropper. Joe Willie lived on his land, and he would take a whip to Joe Willie whenever he got mad at him, but he decided to put on his whip and he said, "Hey, Joe Willie," he said, "how you feel about white folks?" And Joe Willie told him, say, "Boss, I love white folks," scared of that whip and all that was to come. He said anything different. And the white man said, "Is that true, Joe Willie, you love white folks?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Would you be willing to say that on local TV?" Joe Willie said, "Yes, sir, boss, sure would." As Joe Willie thought about it, the white man thought about it, he got this great idea. He said, "Hey, Joe Willie, you think you might say that on statewide TV?" He said, "Sure would, boss, sure would. Be glad to. I love white folks." White man said, "Well, Joe Willie, you think you'd say that on nationwide TV?" And Joe Willie said, "Yes, sir, boss, sure would. Always wanted to. I love them white folks." So at the time, Jack Parr was on the Tonight Show, and the boss man decided that he was going to contact Jack Parr because he heard all of these rumblings all over the Deep South that black people were up in a rage about where white folks were doing what they were doing to them. And so Jack Parr agreed with the boss man that Joe Willie could go on nationwide TV and tell the whole world that he loved white folks. So Joe Willie packed his bags. The boss man flew up ahead of him and put Joe Willie on a bus. In the back, and rode up to New York. So he got up to the big city, and the boss man had a colored cab driver pick him up from the bus station, took him over to the TV station, and all of a sudden, Joe Willie is there in his splendor, getting ready to film live The Tonight Show with Jack Parr. So as he proceeded to go on the stage, the boss man was standing in the wings, and he said, "Psst, psst, hey, Joe Willie, you ready?" And Joe Willie gave him one of them smiles. "Yes, sir, boss. I sure is." Jack Parr invited him to sit down, so he sat next to Jack Parr on the stage, and all of a sudden, all of the lights came down and hit Joe Willie in the face, and Jack Parr said, "Sir, are you ready to make your statement?" He said, "Boss, let me ask you something." He said, "People back in Mississippi looking at me?" He said, "Yes, sir. Mr. Willie said there are about several million, as a matter of fact." He said, "Well, did you tell me that people in this country looking at me? How many folks looking at me?" He said, "Oh, about 22, 23 million people looking at you nationwide, Joe Willie." And Joe Willie said, "Now, you wouldn't lie to me, would you?" He said, "No, we have no reason to." Joe Willie said, "Okay." So he sat there, and Jack Parr said, "Joe Willie, you got something great to say to America." And Joe Willie said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Parr. People in America, help, help, help." "1978 is 1955 in America. Help!" I love you. Thank you very much.